If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
Hello and welcome to another episode of What's Bugging You. I'm your host, Chesley Elkins. This is my co-host.
I am Brian Victor, and we have some special guests here today with us. But before we get to that, a word from our sponsor.
Preventive Pest Control. Taking care of the pests you see and the ones you don't see. Preventive Pest Control. It's as simple as that.
We have a regular on the show now, a special guest, but also a regular, Mr. Mike Swanson.
Thanks for having me again.
And you want to introduce our other?
Yeah, happily. So we got Josh Emms joining us today. He's been a longtime technician with Preventive Pest Control. He's also our resident herpetologist and expert on many things with many and no legs.
I'm glad to be here. I've got a special guest here. This is Petra. She's a desert king snake. She'll be joining us along with a couple other friends I brought along.
Fantastic.
And I mentioned already that she stinks a little bit.
Yeah, she does. She's
Smell her.
Yeah, she's a little nervous, and sometimes they make a little smell to kind of detract the predators.
Is that what that is?
Mm-hmm.
So where's Petra from?
Petra is from central New Mexico. We can find them here. They're not very common in the Albuquerque area, but they do show up from time to time. But the further south you go, the more common they are. Mainly nocturnal, obviously with her dark color. She's going to do real well at night. One of the fun things about these is, well, they eat a lot of different things, very high generalist. But one of the things that they're known for is they'll actually eat rattlesnakes. They'll kill and eat rattlesnakes.
Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, not if you're a rattlesnake.
Well, yeah.
So what are the snakes that are most common that we have here in central New Mexico?
So the most common snake you're going to run into is probably a gopher snake or a bull snake. They get pretty big. They're going to be generalists. They do well around people. So we see them. And then also down around the river, you can also run into garter snakes. We do have a few species of those around. I've got one down here I can pull out real quick.
So before you do that, how big do those the king snakes usually get?
King snake, this is about as big as they get. They don't get much bigger than this.
So about 3 feet?
3 feet. They can get a little bit bigger, but not much.
How old is Petra?
Petra, I've had her for 12, 13 years, and she was an adult when I caught her. So they can live up past 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is false, but growing up, you mentioned bull snakes, you mentioned king snakes will kill rattlesnakes. They always used to say, if there's bull snakes, it's good because there's no rattlesnakes in the area. And is there any truth to that? Or?
Not really. They occupy the same habitats, and they do compete for some of the same prey. So you might, if you have a gopher snake, he's going to be help controlling the mouse population. But if there's rattlesnake coming through, it's going to come through.
So when you say gopher snake, is that the same thing that people say like bull snake or rat snake? Is that all the same thing?
No. So bull snake and gopher snake are on the same species. Mm-hmm. The subspecies we have here is a gopher snake, but some people call them bull snakes. That if you say bull snake, we know you're talking about a gopher snake, and it's just a small thing. Small.
So should customers be worried, or not customers? Do people be worried about when they do see a snake in the yard, or?
If it's a rattlesnake, you might want to just give it its room. We recommend don't mess with them. Chances are, if you're living on your property and you've been there 20 years and you're seeing one rattlesnake, they're not living on your property. They're just moving through. If you just leave them alone, you probably won't see them again.
Yeah.
If you got one that's sticking around and you're really uncomfortable with around, you can always give us a call at Preventive Pest Control. I come out and I do relocate those for a fee.
Okay. And I know snakes are mostly beneficial. They can get rid of rodents and so forth. But if someone truly just wants to snake-proof their yard, like what are some things they can do?
So as far as completely snake-proofing, there's not much out there you can do. There is some rattlesnake fencing that you can get, and you can install that. And you basically just got to make sure there's no way for them to get in. It has to be pretty flat, going up for about 3 or 4 feet. Rattlesnakes don't tend to get very huge, maybe 3 to 4 feet at the max. Usually they're much smaller than that. But yeah, so as long as you have it sealed off that way, and hardware cloth will work for that too. They can't really climb that very well.
Yeah, and explain this too, because I remember walking on the mesa as a kid. Out there, you'd always say, "Oh, it's a snake hole. A snake hole." Snakes don't make holes, right? They don't burrow, really.
They generally don't.
Yeah.
Though they will occupy a burrow. Prairie rattlesnakes will use like prairie dog burrows and things like that to overwinter in. They'll definitely hide in them. When I release a snake, I try to release it into a burrow. That way, it has a place to be out of the sun until it can, until night comes and it can get out and not be exposed to the elements. Because while they do get their energy from the sun, they can overheat real easy as well.
Huh. Not just out the car window at 65.
No.
Yeah, that'd probably be a bad idea.
Yeah, and so they get into pack rat nests, things like that. But they generally don't build their own nest. There's some exceptions, like there's a hognose snake. They've kind of got, it's called a hognose. It's got a little upturned snout, and they'll dig down into the sand, but they're not really. They're mainly looking for toads. They're trying to dig for toads or eggs or lizards or things.
So what is this snake you have here?
This is a wandering garter snake. It's one of the species we have in New Mexico. New Mexico actually has the most species of garter snakes in the country, the most diverse species.
It looks like it's smelling Chesley with its tongue.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, and these ones are kind of cool. They have a red tongue with a black tip.
Is that true? Do they have olfactory senses in their tongue? Is that true?
Yeah, so basically they have, not in their tongue, but their tongue is forked, if you can see. I don't know how well you can see on this camera, but everyone knows a snake has a forked tongue.
I don't know if I did.
Well, it sticks
You
out.
got a lot of surprises today.
It gathers up scent particles, and it brings them in, and it's got an organ in the top of its head called the Jacobson's organ.
Yes, okay.
And that's what interprets smell for them. So because they have that forked tongue, they smell in stereo. So they can know that, hey, that smell, it's not just coming from in front of me, it's coming from this side
That's
or that
fascinating.
side. And a lot of times, like in rattlesnakes, they'll envenomate their prey because they don't have any way to constrict or anything else. They only have their venom. And the venom doesn't work instantaneous.
Mm-hmm.
So the rat will come along. They're an ambush predator. They'll kind of coil up next to a pack rat common path, and they'll coil up next to it. The rat comes by, nail it, and then they'll just wait. Give it a few minutes, and then they'll follow the scent trail, find where it's finally died, and then they'll go ahead and eat it, because a rat can actually damage and kill a snake.
So when they're flicking their tongue, it's almost like if you want to like smell something that's like in a stew pot, and you kind of waft the fumes towards your nose.
Yeah, it's one of the some species have really good senses of sight. Some have really good senses of smell. So it's just another way for them to navigate the world that they live in.
That's interesting.
With no legs.
Yeah, with no legs.
So as far as do some snakes like live in dens with other snakes and some like more on their own?
So yes, kind of. Mostly they don't tend to congregate together except at certain times of year.
Okay.
And in some parts, like here, we'll have like, if you have nice big rocky outcrops with deep cracks in them, they'll spend their winters in there because they can get down below the surface and kind of keep it a constant, right around 50 to 60 degrees, so they don't freeze. So where areas where those are not as concentrated, they'll gather to those, and they'll overwinter there.
So they congregate to kind of combine their heat?
Just because it's the place that they can do it.
Okay.
Not necessarily because there's other snakes there. Now, there is some research that's been done that was actually discovered in a species that we have here in New Mexico, the Arizona black rattlesnake, which barely comes in over on the western portion of our state, eastern Arizona, western New Mexico. And in the springtime, they'll use some of these same overwintering dens, and the females will all the gravid females, the pregnant females, will gather together, and they'll have their clutches there in the same place year after year, and they've actually shown that the mothers will actually stay with the babies for about a week until they make their first shed. Then they kind of disperse on their own. So we've actually got parental care in rattlesnakes
For a week?
for about a week.
Yeah, cool.
And one thing that before it was none. We thought it was none. So, but yeah. So now there's also different things that we've learned. There's a place in Colorado. They've got what's called a rattle cam. Go to rattlecam.org. Throughout the year, they'll have live video feeds of these snake dens, of these snakes coming out, and that you can go on there and you say, oh, hey, I saw this snake at this time, and they'll have the snakes named and marked in different ways, and you see when the babies come, and when rain comes, they'll actually coil up so that the rainwater will collect in their coils and then drink out of their coils.
Interesting.
Just some different cool behaviors that we're just now noticing because we actually have the technology to do it.
When I was in high school, middle school, high school, a friend of mine who used to spend summers just hiking up in the foothills in Albuquerque. And we found more than once in the summer, not really a burrow, but sort of like a enclosure caused by kind of like a boulder fall. And multiple times we found a group of like 5 or more rattlesnakes just hanging around in the shade during the middle of the day.
Yeah, and that's just to get out of the sun. Like I said, it gets real hot here in the summer, and they can overheat just as much as anything else. So they're yeah.
So as far as as far as New Mexico, is the rattlesnake pretty much the most dangerous or the only dangerous snake?
Yeah. So basically, the rattlesnakes are the only dangerous venomous snakes that we have. Definitely in this area. Down in the southwestern portion of the state, we do get the Arizona coral snake. They're very, very secretive, and you rarely see them, and they rarely bite. That doesn't mean you should pick one up. But if you basically, the easiest way to tell a venomous snake in the state of New Mexico is if it has a rattle, beware. The best thing you can do though is if you don't know what it is, leave it alone.
Yeah, I think that unless you're a super expert, I think that picking up snakes is like eating mushrooms. Like, you just don't do it.
Right.
It's not worth it.
You don't eat mushrooms?
Not that I find on the
On
ground.
your pizza?
Not that I find it. If I get them at Sprouts, I'll eat them. Yeah.
So we all know the answer to this, but maybe you could explain the difference between venomous and poisonous.
Okay, so it's really semantics. It doesn't. When someone says is the snake venomous or is it poisonous, they do have different meanings. Venom is something that's injected. Poisonous just means can you eat it? So like we were talking about mushrooms there earlier. They are poisonous, not venomous. But we do have snakes that are venomous. And for the longest time, we'd say, oh, there's really no snakes that are poisonous. Well, that as you study things, you learn that that's not exactly true. There's a couple snakes in Asia that are venomous and poisonous. And then they're finding that some garter snakes in the Pacific Northwest, due to the salamanders that they eat, are actually poisonous.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
And yeah.
Is there
It's really pedantic. We know what you mean when you ask it if it's poisonous.
Yeah.
I'll usually just respond with, it's venomous.
Yeah.
And just leave it at that.
Yes.
You don't need to go into a big diatribe about it.
is there a definitive way to tell if a snake is venomous?
In New Mexico, the best way to tell is if it's got a rattle, and then a coral snake. So I would say Google a picture of a coral snake, learn what they look like, and realize they're only going to be like, 13 to 18 inches
Was it red
long.
and yellow kill a fella or something like that?
Yeah, that works great if you're in Florida.
Yeah.
I think the best one is if you don't know what it is, leave it alone. Because there are very rare instances where snakes get out. I mean, a few years ago, I guess it's been more than a few years, but there was a king cobra that escaped from the zoo in New York, the Bronx Zoo, I think. And so people run into these things every once in a while. I have a friend who was in a pet shop, and this guy comes in and with a cobra, an albino cobra, and didn't want to keep it anymore. And he said if the pet shop wasn't taking it, he's just going to go let it go in the Sandias.
Good grief.
So there's a loose one in the Sandias?
No,
you're saying?
no. My friend got it. Got it to a proper home.
Well, you mentioned poisonous snakes before. Is there do a lot of people eat snakes? Have you ever eaten snake?
I've never eaten snake. I've heard people eat rattlesnake. They say it kind of tastes like bad chicken, so I'll just stick to chicken.
They'll have good chicken.
Good chicken.
Bad chicken.
That sounds like a good idea to me.
A herpetologist isn't just snakes, right? It's all reptiles.
Yeah, it's
right?
all reptiles. We do have another venomous lizard in the state. We do have the Gila monster.
Which is an awesome name, by the way.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And they're really, really cool lizards. We do get them down in the southwest corner of the state. That's kind of where all the cool stuff is for herpetology. That's all cool, but that's where we get the Gila monsters. Very rarely seen. They're only active surface level for maybe a month out of the year. Mainly eat eggs. Their venom is actually purely defensive. They do not use it for their prey at all.
Are you aware of people getting bitten by Gila monsters anytime in the last 20 years?
There was actually a guy who died from a Gila monster bite either last year or the year before, and it was a guy who was keeping one as a pet. And it's not very common. I think he had an allergic reaction or something like that. It was because there's no anti-venom or anything like that, because they just simply usually don't kill people. So you just kind of
So we always ask the question right on this show, like if we're talking about pests, like what can homeowners do to keep them out of your house? And in the case of the Gila monsters, just don't have one as a pet. Right.
I mean, like I said, they're very, very rare. I've heard some people, I've seen some people on Facebook claim they find one in Placitas. No, and they say, because of global warming, they're moving north. I'm like, it doesn't quite work that way. For one thing, you're talking hundreds of miles. It's not just a hop, skip, and a jump.
So you're probably more likely to find somebody who's escaped monitor than a Gila monster.
Right. And honestly, a lot of times, a lot of people, they don't know their reptiles. They see, that's kind of an orange and black lizard. And you dug it up out of the ground, so it's probably got dirt on it. Maybe it looks a little bumpy, because the Gila monsters have those little calcite deposits on their bone structure. And I'm thinking probably likely what that was a tiger salamander, just covered in dirt, kind of yellow and black. And a lot of people, and as well as I do, when people have something and they're not sure about it, their mind jumps to the worst possible conclusion.
Exactly.
It's like the brown recluse for spiders.
Everything's a brown recluse.
Everything's a brown recluse, even if it's not brown, even if it's not a spider, it's a brown recluse.
Yeah. Sir, that's a frog.
So what other kind of lizards do you have, like in the Albuquerque area?
We have a lot of whiptails. They're the ones with the stripes down the back. In fact, our state reptile is the New Mexico whiptail. And you can find them down by the river and that kind of in the foothills a little bit too. We have several different species of whiptails. One of the cool things about them is they're a unisexual species. They literally have crossbred between other species of whiptails to where they reproduce on their own. They do not require males to reproduce. They're all literal clones of each other.
That's
so
pretty
all
cool.
Female species. And there's several species.
Are those the ones that we call like the blue tail lizards?
Yeah, that'd be like a blue tail lizard, although there's a lot of them that have blue tails.
And do their tails truly grow back?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. They'll actually release their tail.
Yeah.
And it'll wiggle around and stuff, and that'll cause whatever's going after them to go after that
like
tail.
a flare off of a fighter jet.
Yeah, and then it goes off and it grows back. It loses some of the patterning and pigmentation that it had before, but it does grow back.
So if you have a lot of lizards in your yards, what's the pros and cons of that?
Well, lizards eat bugs. They love cockroaches. They love grasshoppers. They love
Ants,
crickets, ants. They eat a lot of those things. So there's really no downside to me to having lizards in your yard.
Unless you get freaked out by them.
Yeah, if you get freaked out by them, or if I did have one where the customer had a vent on the side of the house, and lizards kept getting stuck up in the dryer vent, so they kept smelling stuff in the dryer vent. So we just did like we would normally do, a rodent exclusion, and just
Screened it
off and solved the problem.
So I would say that for me, the biggest pro about having lizards around your house is that it would attract more roadrunners, which are the coolest, I think.
Roadrunners are cool birds.
Yeah.
They're modern dinosaurs.
Little baby dinosaurs.
Little baby dinosaurs.
Yeah. Yeah,
Birds,
I love running
and
on them.
that's what I always say about birds. They're just over-evolved herps.
Speaking of like dinosaurs, I don't know if I've seen one in years, but I remember every once in a while coming across out in the mesa, horny toad.
Yeah. We do have horned lizards here.
Those kind of like almost little dinosaur.
Everyone calls them horny toads. They're actually lizards, and if you call them horny toad, whatever. That's what we've always called them. That's what they are. But they're lizards, not toads, and they are very cool little little dinosaurs, horns all over them. We have about 5 species in New Mexico. The most common one we find in the Albuquerque area is going to be the round-tailed horned lizard or the short-horned lizard.
Are there any protected species of lizard?
They're all the horned
That's what
lizards
I
are
thought,
protected. That just they've always been that way.
So
but
us
they finally
taking them
made
to
it
show and tell
clear.
in school was probably a no-no back in the day.
Yeah, and all the Boy Scouts and taking them to Boy Scout jamborees and trading them for all kinds of stuff in the
did that.
70s and 80s. That was all.
So those are the species that they defensively squirt blood out of the.
They do. Some
secrete blood
species
from
of
the
horned
eyes.
lizards will squirt blood, and they found that it's specifically repellent, and the taste is not liked by canids. So you're talking coyotes are going to be the main thing that they're warding off with that.
Interesting.
I've never had one actually squirt on me. I've seen pictures of them with the blood on their eyes.
Right.
But I've never actually had one squirt at me.
Have
You,
you,
you have to bark at it.
Maybe.
have you ever heard of that? Have you ever heard of that snake that builds things?
The boa constrictor.
Yeah, you got it. Come on,
Oh,
Josh.
you stole your thunder.
Come on now, man.
Boa constrictor. It's funny because the common name is actually the same as the scientific name, so it's boa constrictor.
Oh, interesting.
Kind of one of the, but now they've been renamed, so it's actually boa imperator. But anyway,
So you've been doing pest control for about 20 years. How long have you been, I guess, working with snakes? Or
I've always been into snakes. One of my earlier snake memories was on the day that I almost died twice.
I was a snake wrangler.
Brian and I actually went to high school together, and we were on a scout trip. We were going to go on a motorhome trip up to Yellowstone and do biking and all this stuff. And the motorhome broke down, so we had to go, and we're hanging out in Corrales, and we're running along the ditch trails there on our bikes. And Brian jumps off his bike and runs up there and has his foot over his. There's a bull snake under my.
No, it was a
shoe.
rattlesnake. It's
There's
huge.
a bull
Huge
snake under my
rattlesnake.
shoe.
No, huge
And he lifts
rattlesnake.
it up. It's this tiny little snake. I pick it up, start playing with it, and then all of us kind of determined that it was a rattlesnake. I still don't think it was, but we
It
were
was the
we
biggest,
were
scariest
positive. We were sure positive it was a rattlesnake.
Well, it's a good thing you picked it up. That was
Well,
a good
I never
idea.
had a triangular head.
I let it go, and we ended up throwing it in the canal, and it swam away. But and then we all had to jump out of the motorhome later that day when we got it back up and running. So that was the day I almost died twice.
The motorhome is just a ref. It burnt down while we were driving.
It burnt down.
That's
Fire.
terrifying.
We didn't even
Caught the
make it
mace
to
on
Cuba.
fire. And, that's a good. I forgot all about that memory. So and then Mike has a. Would you rather? What was your rather?
Oh, yeah. It's would you rather time. All right. Think about this one. Would you rather have 100 whiptail lizards in your bedroom for a week or a rattlesnake hiding somewhere in your house for 24 hours and you have to stay in the house the whole time, or you have to sleep in the bedroom every night?
Can I have both?
Yes, you can have both, actually. I don't know why that's not a thing, but yes, you can have both.
You sleep in a hammock for the 24 hours? I don't know.
It's a week.
There was
rattlesnake?
Oh, yeah.
There was a special on TV. It's been years ago now, but some guy on the Las Vegas Strip, they set him up in a big clear room and everything, and he spent I think it was 24 hours, and they just kept introducing all these different venomous snakes like king cobras and mambas and all kinds of stuff, and he just stayed in there with them the whole time. And he was obviously aware of where they were, but
So fear is obviously not a factor for him.
yeah, fear's not a factor.
With
for
Joe
him.
Rogan? With Joe Rogan?
Joe Rogan. He might have been covering this podcast. I don't know. Kind of tangentially located or related to that, I was on a call, and the customer was complaining that their dog had been bit by a rattlesnake. It was down south of Berlin. And I got the call and headed out there and went down, and I got down there and searched the property and didn't find anything, but he had a crawl space on the home. So I got down in the crawl space, and had all my gear on, my respirator and all my gear, a hat, and I had a bucket and a hook and not much space to work with. And he had a vapor barrier, which was basically a sheet of plastic along the bottom there. And I was crawling through there, and it makes a lot of noise as I'm going. And then I stop, but the crinkling kept happening. I was like, oh, there's something underneath the plastic here. And then I saw it, and I could see it moving. And I have no idea, it's not clear plastic, so I have no idea what's underneath there. So I had my hook with me, and it was kind of coming up towards the end of the plastic there, and I kind of used the hook to kind of hurt it off to the end there, and it poked its head out, and it was a little king snake. So went over and grabbed it, and of course it bit me, but it was fine.
That's funny.
So you're involved with the Herpetological Society. You want to tell us a little bit about that and what they do?
So basically the New Mexico Herpetological Society was formed in 1963, basically just to put out what snakes are, how they're beneficial and how we can live around them, and just how cool they are. And we have meetings regularly once a month. You can find us on Facebook for when those are, and just have great presentations and good times. Go on field trips, look for snakes and other things.
At your meetings, do you have snacks?
We do. We had cookies last time.
Well, Josh,
They're not always snake shaped.
we appreciate you joining us today, and it's always a pleasure getting to talk to you and pick your brain about reptiles and snakes and what's venomous and what's poisonous. And so, thank you very much. Until next time, Mike.
Thank you for tuning in to What's Bugging You, and we'll see you next time.